Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to today's episode of Avalon Meta Live. We're going to decipher a lot of the things that came into our attention this past week. We have a lot of exciting news in today's episode of the Avalon News.
Follow your passion might be a perfect question to ask and might have a perfect answer when interpreted right.
Let's start tracking which stocks can actually go up and go down, or which stocks have an advantage with the vaccine coming out.
Why it would have been more expensive to fake a moon landing back in those days. It's quite an interesting video to watch.
The economic activity created from the App Store alone is worth $500 billion.
So let's move on to the next question.
Man, it was too easy.
Too easy, no? Why didn't you answer? Let's go. So can we have the slides, please? What's on the news first? Wonderful. Let's get started with Facebook. So on Feb 4, that's today, Facebook turns 17 years old. 17 years old. So Facebook was started by Mark Zuckerberg. I think most of us know if you've seen the story of the social network. It was started in Mark's dormitory. And it started off as a simple experiment where he started to, hack the Harvard's student database. He called it Face Smash back then. And he saw that Face Smash was actually very successful. And then he decided on 2004, I think, to actually register Face Smash as the Facebook.com. And the early days of Facebook had a lot of features that, we don't have today. As in, a lot of the features that we have today was not there in the early days of Facebook. For example, the news feed or tagging people, or in fact, Facebook pages. So Facebook's come a really long way. One of the most recent things that actually Facebook's come up with is the Oculus Quest. And there's a particular interest in the Oculus Quest and why the whole story of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and the Oculus Quest come together. Remember, guys, you realize that with the Avalon News, there's always a puzzle in place, and it's your job today to decipher what it is. Today is kind of simple. So I mentioned about the Oculus Quest, right? So the Oculus Quest has been a project that I think Facebook acquired around 7 years ago in 2014. And ever since then, it's not really, the investors or the people who have actually funded the company, they haven't seen much of it, right? What has actually happened to the Oculus Quest. You see, Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg is a founder he's one of the last founders the last founder CEOs that actually exists. He's one of the last one of his own kind. So Mark Zuckerberg, there are a lot of, the big tech companies, the FANG companies that we've heard of. For example, there's the Microsoft with Bill Gates, and we have Google, and then we have Jeff Bezos with Amazon. And all of these people, they're all founders, they were CEOs of the company. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg is one of the last people who is now both the founder and the CEO. We'll talk about that in the next news. Don't switch. I want to explain about the Quest first. So with the Quest coming in, one new feature has come into the Oculus Quest, and that is that Facebook Messenger has entered into the Oculus Quest. The Oculus Quest is a revolution in the making because it's actually become a lot more consumer friendly, especially in the Oculus Quest 2 and the price range. A lot of people are actually buying it. And one of the features, like I mentioned, is the Facebook Messenger coming in. And this Facebook's Messenger's integration is very seamless, right? A person who is chatting with you on Facebook Messenger, whether you're wearing the headset, they won't know that you're wearing the headset. And you can actually carry on with a lot of the things within VR and actually type on the Facebook Messenger simultaneously. This is exciting. Also for developers is very exciting because with the Oculus Quest 2, Facebook's introducing the App Lab for developers. So a lot of cool features, and it's just exciting to see how reality is changing. Now, I mentioned about, now you can switch on to the next slide. Right. So I mentioned in the previous slide about how, Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg is the last founder of its own kind. What did I mean by that? That, for example, Facebook started off, Mark Zuckerberg founded the company and he took it meteoric rise. Today it has around 2.7 billion users, so many acquisitions like WhatsApp, Instagram, all of that. Jeff Bezos actually has a very similar story. Started the company on its own. But Jeff and Mark are different. For example, Mark Zuckerberg is different from all of the other founders because he, in fact, controls the company a lot. The Oculus Quest, like I mentioned, it wasn't showing that many results to its investors, but he was able to carry on that project and still maintain that. He wasn't, the investors, like, for example, if someone in the board would complain to Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg saying, hey, your project is not working out, they had literally no control. The only option that they could do is probably sell their stock. But for other companies like Microsoft, for example, in Microsoft's stage, I think when Steve Ballmer was there as the CEO and there was a leadership change, there was a company called the Value Act Capital, and they made a lot of influence in the leadership change, etc. So yeah, Mark Zuckerberg was and is, he controls a lot of how Facebook's daily operations and how Facebook runs. But one man that is switching from the daily operations is Jeff Bezos. And this came as a shock to a lot of people, and it, a lot of alarm bells started to ring within Wall Street and a lot of places when they found out that Jeff Bezos is leaving. But Jeff Bezos is leaving is not, in fact, he's not leaving. I don't know if he's stepping down, up, or away. He's actually stepping into a role called of the executive chairman. And who is going to be the new CEO? That is Mr. Andy Jassy. So Andy Jassy has been Jeff Bezos's right-hand man and very trusted personnel, his lieutenant of sorts since quite some time. Andy Jassy came into Amazon quite early at the start of Amazon, and he came in, I think, as a marketing manager or something, and then he started off a very important part of Amazon today, which is the AWS, which is the Amazon Web Services. I think he founded the company with around 57 people. Andy Jassy comes in, and a lot of this, there's a lot of speculation on why Jeff Bezos is leaving right now, but it makes sense, right? So Jeff Bezos is like, Mark Zuckerberg. Jeff Bezos has seen the company from early stages when it was just a bookstore, an online bookstore. He took that, now it's one of the largest companies, or probably the largest companies that is consumer facing. So it's meteoric. He became the world's richest man. What next, right? So Jeff Bezos wants to think beyond, and he wants to test himself. He actually, both Jassy and Bezos released 2 memos explaining what is the next steps. And to me, it makes a lot of sense why he's doing it. There is the part of thinking beyond and entering into philanthropy and, experimenting and challenging himself. There's also another aspect where, big tech companies are facing a lot of antitrust and a lot of the Congress. There's been a lot of congressional hearings where these big tech companies are being faced with that they're monopolizing the entire field, and small companies. If you remember the Avalon News episode with Varun, where he spoke about, Amazon's strategy of, going after the gazelle. This has been there. So it makes sense why, Jeff Bezos actually maybe wants to step a little bit away from the limelight, away from the daily operations. In fact, Andy has been dealing with the daily operations since quite some time. And he's part of the S team of Amazon, which is like the core team, where a lot of things, where a lot of the decisions, the strategic team. So Andy has been a part of that. I think since 2003, he's been attending almost all the meetings that Jeff Bezos has also been attending. So it makes a lot of sense why he's there. And also it gives a direction into what Amazon wants to start focusing in, right? So the AWS is the most profitable wing of Amazon. So it obviously makes sense to get the guy who's founded Amazon Web Services and make him the CEO. In fact, one of the things which is a common thing about all of if you notice the thumbnail, there are a lot of founders that are actually standing behind Mark Zuckerberg, right? I think there's Larry Page, there's Steve Jobs, there's Bill Gates, and all of them. Whenever they transition from founder CEO into a different role, maybe as chairman or advisor or whatever, there's probably people start to worry, because especially when founders take a step away, people start to worry, will the company still have the same values, etc. But Wall Street, for example, has reacted positively. There was a little bit of alarm bells, but the overall response has been positive. In fact, that's a story with all of these other companies also. When Steve Jobs left, Tim Cook came in. I think Apple's seen around 10%, 10 times an increase in size. The same with other companies like Bill Gates, and when he left, and also when Sundar Pichai, for example, when Bill Gates left and Satya Nadella came in, and when Sundar Pichai came in after the Larry Page and Sergey Brin's reign. So Wall Street has been responding positively, and the same is the story when Andy Jassy has come. So he's not officially the CEO, he'll come in the third quarter. But it's exciting to see where Amazon will go and where Jeff Bezos will go. So Jeff has been saying that he's going to focus more on philanthropic activities like the Earth Day Fund and the One Day Fund. So these are some of his philanthropic activities. Earth Day, because he keeps saying that climate change is the biggest threat to humanity, and the One Day Fund is where he's going to be trying to help these small Montessori's and preschools and basically the initiatives, the first day initiatives. So yeah, excited to see what Jeff Bezos is up to, what Andy Jassy can actually bring into Amazon. We'll move on to the next slide. Yep, we spoke about this, same thing. Maybe just quickly go through. Alrighty, I think we can go on to the next slide. Interesting. So here's Amazon coming into the picture once again. Now, this is a very interesting news. I actually saw this on, I think, Jeff Bezos' Instagram, where he put this up as one of his posts. And this is a Super Bowl ad. And I actually want you guys to watch this. Can we play this? Yeah.
It's just flawless, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, I literally couldn't imagine a more beautiful vessel for Alexa to be inside. Alexa, how many tablespoons are in a cup?
There are 16 tablespoons in a cup.
Babe, food just got here. Why you cooking? Who's that?
Alexa, turn on the sprinklers.
Honey, I already ran the sprinklers. Things are getting way too wet around here.
Alexa, dim the lights.
Alexa, lights up! Alexa, lights up!
Add bath oils to my shopping list.
Alexa, no, don't do that.
Read my audiobook.
I was in his hands. I was being changed. Realized that I was also kissing him.
Honey, other people have to use the bathroom around here too.
Okay. It's quite a sexy ad out there. So that's Michael B. Jordan starring the Alexa's ad, which was, debuted on the Super Bowl. It's a very interesting ad. But I think a lot of you might have drawn some parallels to a similar scene in probably somewhere else. That's what happened when I saw this ad. So I found this ad very smart, obviously talking about the smart assistant and Alexa and Michael B. Jordan's voice being used as the Alexa voice. So this has been happening in the past also. I mean, Alexa's voice, I think they used to have Gordon Ramsay came in. There were a lot of ads where these kind of things happen. But this ad is kind of particularly interesting because it clicked to me a special movie that played around with a very similar idea. Can you go on to the next slide? And that's this movie by Joaquin Phoenix, where he stars along with Scarlett Johansson. And in this movie, so Joaquin Phoenix actually gets attracted and develops feelings for his smart assistant. So basically, it's like falling in love with your Siri or your Google Assistant. So something like that happens. And a lot of people find this movie a little uncomfortable. I think the smart assistant in that movie was called Samantha. So if you start noticing, the idea of the Super Bowl ad is actually not very new. It's very similar to what happened here. In fact, this movie's ad was also, that's when I did some research and I found out even ideas like this was not very new. And that goes back into a lot of our childhoods. Can we go on to the next slide? Okay, now you can see here there's a small little toy. It's like a keychain. It's called the Tamagotchi. Now, so the Tamag is also basically it means egg, and Watchi is another word for is a Japanese term for watch. Okay, so the Tamagotchi is actually a small toy that a lot of people had early days, where they used to tie it on their bag, and it was like a virtual pet. Okay, in fact, so this whole idea of virtual pet, then you start to draw a lot of parallels. Now today I'm going to be connecting a lot of dots. Okay, so there's Tamagotchi on one side, there's the Alexa, and if you notice that Alexa's body, it looks so much like a Pokemon. So what exactly is a Pokemon? If you know the Pokemon, the term Pokemon is actually a portmanteau, which means it's a blend of two words. So Poke stands for pocket and Mon stands for monsters. So Pokemon's like pocket monsters. Then I realized like this company, the Tamagotchi, the toy, it was designed by the same team. Two people, one was Aki Matai from a company called Wiz, and the other was the Bandai team. And Bandai is the same team that's responsible for Pokemon. They're also responsible for Digimon. So Digimon is another term for digital monsters. Now start to draw parallels. Pocket monsters. What is a pocket monster today? Right? Your Alexas, your Google Assistants. It just blew my mind when I actually saw this. And you can play this quick ad. It talks about how the Tamagotchi actually works.
Well, if it isn't Tamagotchi, her new favorite pet.
Yes!
So what's that make me? Fish sticks?
Oh, are you hungry?
Oh, no. By all means, feed it. Play till your heart's content.
Look, Goldie! I took good care of her, and she changed again.
Change? How about changing some water here?
Katie, bus is here!
So Tamagotchi can pause. I can pause too. Want to see that again?
Tamagotchi, the original virtual reality pet. Your care determines the pets you get from Bandai.
Right. So you saw those last few clips of those animals. So the idea was like you get this egg, the Tamag, and you start to nurture it. Okay. And so basically the Tamagotchi, the keychain or the pet that you have, the virtual pet, it starts to make these noises and etc. when it wants your attention. If it's hungry, it'll start to beep. If you don't give it enough nurturing, if you don't give it enough attention, it'll start to beep. So then I saw a lot of news which actually spoke about how this is very similar to what we are doing today. I spoke about how it was very similar to the phone, but what about your Fitbit? What about your calorie trackers or your schedule planners? What do they actually do? When you're using a Fitbit, basically it beeps whenever you've exercised or you've done certain amount of work. The same with say your schedule planners. So it's very similar. They beep when they want their attention, and then you have to give your attention. So the Tamagotchi is actually it ended up being very annoying to a lot of people. It was a fad back then, but it's interesting to see how the idea or this whole idea of this technology has been there since so long, and I'm sure there's so many precursors, or the idea of this has been there since so long. Talking about nurturing, so I mentioned this egg. So first you nurture this egg, and then after it starts getting certain amount of attention, what it does is it eventually hatches, and that's when it starts turning into different animals. You can get a duck or a turtle, etc. So those were the last few clips on that egg. Let's go on to the final slide. Okay. So this one's very interesting. This is a particular news. So we in the headline it's written "Spinach in your inbox." Kind of confusing, right? So this was a tweet by Euronews. Euronews, a very famous news channel, a news platform within Europe that has been covering. So they came up with this news called "Spinach in your inbox," right? And I started to dig deeper, and I found out that this idea of spinach being in your inbox, or spinach being able to send emails, has been there since quite some time. I mean, the official article or the original article was actually there 4 years ago. It was prepared by this team in MIT by Dr. Michael Strana. Can we go on to the next slide? I think we have a little bit more. Right. And that's him. That's Michael Strana's team. And the whole idea of what it is, I'll explain what it is. But the whole idea has been there since quite some time, and he's called it plant nanobionics. So let's explain. So, if there's a plant, we all know about photosynthesis, right? I'm taking you back into our biology lessons. So there's a plant, and where does all the food factory happen? The plant's food factory is officially the leaf, right? That's where the sunlight comes in, and then there's a lot of magic that happens within the leaf, and finally you get food. Now, if you actually break down the anatomy of this, it's like the leaf has like the upper layer which faces the sun, which is generally tends to be a little more darker because obviously it gets exposure to light. And that actually has a lot of mesophyll cells or palisading parenchymatic cells. And these mesophyll cells have a lot of chloroplast in them. And it's this chloroplast with the chlorophyll that's essentially responsible for, taking the oxygen, sunlight, and all, taking the carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water, and giving out the oxygen. Now, Dr. Strana has actually worked around a similar aspect. What he said is that, and he's worked on this plant, the spinach. Now, spinach is a plant and a vegetable that I love, and I'm super excited that it's in the news for this. It's also in the news for other reasons. So people are exploring the functionalities and what you can actually do with, a simple vegetable like spinach. So what Dr. Strano says is that plants like the spinach are very good analytical chemists. Okay, they have an extensive root network in the soil and are constantly sampling groundwater. So when Michael Strana actually came up with this study, it was, to detect if plants can identify explosives and, the level of certain compounds called nitroaromatics within the soil. And so these mesophyll cells that I explained within the leaf, what they did is they embedded these carbon nanotubes. And this carbon nanotubes can then detect these nitroaromatics, and then it sends a signal which gets detected. So this infrared signal gets detected by a sensor. And that sensor is basically what then sends you the email. I know it's a little bit of a clickbait, but it's interesting. And it's extremely interesting also because this spinach is now even coming in as a potential replacement for fuel cells. So it's a beautiful study. Read it. It came into the limelight recently for some random reason. A lot of people on Twitter have been throwing memes, etc., on how, now we're going to get a lot of spam mail from spinach and they want you to leave me from it, etc. But yeah, interesting article. Go through it. So yeah, that's about pretty much covers today's news. And now I want you guys to think about what we discussed, and I will explain what the overarching theme is or the connecting link is. Let's take another 5 seconds, a quick breather. Cool. So like I mentioned, today's connecting dot is quite simple. It's kind of philosophical. It starts to question what we define life as, right? I remember early on, especially the articles that talk about this one, where, we start to think, what is life? Do plants have brains? What is life? Is life consciousness? Is life being able to move? Is life just breathing? How can we define life? Especially when things like technology starts to interface and we're starting to get so much of technology in our lives, and we've become pretty much, it's part of living, and it becomes so confusing to how we actually define life. Where do we draw the lines between what is living and what is not living? It also gives us the opportunity to start experimenting and coming up with these new ideas. For example, reinventing ourselves and coming up with new ideas and redefining what we have life. So even if you think of life as it is today and how, don't limit yourself into thinking that, hey, this is life and my life is like this. I personally, I'll give you a story. Like, I personally used to hate the idea of computers. I used to think that looking at computers is actually super boring. Getting a job that dealt with computers is super boring. But today, I pretty much consider that this phone or this laptop is a part of my life, is an extension of my human body. And it's exponentially increased my powers and the ability that I can actually access. My speed is increased, my knowledge is increased, my ability to do things is increased. So now I'm probably half robot to some extent. I know it's a little bit of conspiracy, or it gives you a bit of a thinking, but I just want to throw this thought, go through the news once more, see what are the ideas, see how you can redefine your life and make it for the better. That's about it, guys. Like, share and subscribe, please, if you like the news. I love the comments that you guys put in. I hope I've tried to reduce the number of actuallys in today's video. I was actually consciously doing that, but I hope you guys enjoyed today's news. If you like it, do like, share and subscribe. That's my time. Bye bye.